once again for the recording here to our Fit First, 1st of March, Embodied EG. So just as we begin, I'd like to invite you to take a moment to take like a screenshot of yourself as you are right now. Like when you take a screenshot, it's like you capture the composition of how your body form is right now. Your posture, your breath, the tone of your body, the density of the body. It's like in a picture. It's like frozen, to freeze a moment and to just take the overall composition of how you are right now. And to invite you to just soften to the shape and to how you are. And notice how you soften. The process of softening. Yeah, and taking another breath, feeling the base of your body, feeling your feet. And very slowly opening your eyes, and as you do so, allow the world to come to you. Allow the images to arrive to your eyes rather than your eyes going out. Just feel still the echoes of your composition, and then taking in, allowing the group to come to your eyes, and noticing yourself and noticing the group, noticing the atmosphere in the group. Maybe zooming in on one person and sense, feel. What happens to your composition when you tune in to another? And from another to the whole group. Listen to these processes and how you do this. Yeah, maybe another breath. And another welcome. And in a sense, the invitation throughout today is to track yourself as you can, and what you hear, to hear with your body as an organ of sensing. And listen to the resonance of the body as we share, as we go through it, without heaviness, but just like every now and again, I might remind you to come back, to just listen to how you notice yourself and how you notice yourself within a group. And Nate, why don't we maybe start with our first item?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Idit and I both want to share with you a little bit about our own experience of embodying sociocracy or dynamic governance. So in a few minutes, I'm going to talk about what are the 4 principles of sociocracy. And you'll recognize some of the things that I'm talking about, I hope, in those 4 principles. But a lot of the time, we practice these principles in groups. Sociocracy is a way of organizing human groups. But I found that the ways that I work outside of myself and the ways that I facilitate groups also strongly apply to the way that I relate inside myself. So, for example, I find that if I want to do something in my life, I have to come to an agreement inside myself to move forwards on it. If I don't come to that kind of an agreement inside myself, the inner resistance stops me from moving forward, or some part of me might sabotage what I'm doing. And some people solve that by overpowering those resisting parts of themselves. I could use drugs and alcohol. I could use very energetic yoga practices, whatever it might be. But I'm finding that I'm able to move forward in my life with a lot less drama by listening deeply to the different parts of myself that are expressing resistance in different ways, by really loving and listening to them. And when I do that, I'm able to sort of have this inner experience of cooperation. And I also find it easier to have an outer experience of cooperation with the people I'm close to, the people I love, or with my colleagues. So that inner practice of consent really lines up with the outer practice of consent and makes me a more effective collaborator. So there are a lot more examples I could give, but with the limited time that we've got, I guess I just want to say that my experience of practicing sociocracy, it's this real congruence that the more I do the outer work, the more I pick up experiences that I can apply to my inner work. And the more I do that inner work, the easier it is for me to act in relationships, in my workplace, et cetera, in a way that, matches the values and intentions that I have for sociocracy. So I'll just pause there and hand over to you, Idit, if you want to share. But I'm curious, what happened for you in your body when you were listening to me?
Yeah, so thank you for sharing. Thank you for the question. I felt in my body, I felt an expansion in my arms and in my body. There was a sense of excitement and bubbling. And in one way, it touched some sort of fear that because what I've heard is intimacy. I've heard that there is something there that in the way that you relate it, it opens to a deeper listening, a deeper ability to connect and to intimacy. And then it's sort of expanded me, but also there was a little bit of a level of, wow, this is deep, and where am I? How far and how close do I want to be in my own intimacy? So yes, thank you. And I invite you to do the same, like to just notice in yourselves as Nate shares and I share, just ask your body what's his response, what's the resonance in the body. Yeah, for me, a bit like Nate, I was trying to think before our meeting, what shall I share? And there's many different ways, but I think that fundamentally for me, and it started really with when I came in and joined the ICMTA, it widens my capacity to hold polarities, in the sense that I'm learning to listen to all the members of my body. And it started when I first came into the ICMTA, into a circle, and I remember I was sitting with Raduca, and I've never spoken to anyone from the Czech Republic. And she had another way of talking and thinking, and my body didn't know what to do with it. And it's like straight away went with all sorts of maybe judgments and things like this. And it took me a while to relax and to tune in and to suddenly whoa, how much intelligence. Whoa, I don't think this way. But it took me into a deeper reflection on my own body. How do I listen to all the members of my body, all the parts of my body, my thinking, the parts that I know and the parts that are maybe exiled or fragmented or the ones that I don't like. And as I do that and as I practice this daily, and I live in Israel, we nearly have a civil war outside, what I find is that I can host and I can hold more of the complexity of the world, and also to look in all the ways that I'm violent, that I'm racist, that that I don't think that I'm racist. It's just opened me to a much deeper parts of myself and much more whole of all of me. And that's for me, when we practice our rounds in circles, how we listen, how we receive feedback. So all of this is the way that I take it in and work with my inner workings of my body. Yeah, maybe I'll stop here. Thank you. Nate, what do you hear?
Well, I noticed waves of emotion coming up in me. And, when you're talking about really hearing other people and their capacities that might be different or showing up differently from your capacities or the way that you express yourself, and then reflecting how that's connected to the way that you might reject some of those capacities in yourself in ways that you can open up to those things that you would reject. I'm not surprised that I'm having some feelings coming up, because that's a really deepening, powerful practice. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And for already maybe some people that had some work with dynamic governance, or just the fact that you're here, and even if you didn't work with dynamic governance or sociocracy, something pulled you to learn, to listen. So just notice from what we're sharing, what is maybe true for you, or what happened in your practice. How is the practice already added to your life, to your embodiment practice? And if you're hearing it for the first time, what is the one thing that you take and you think, this maybe is interesting for me. Yeah. So Nate, do you want to talk to us maybe about the 4 principles of DG or sociocracy?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about the 4 principles, and I'm going to ask Idit, would you please give me clear feedback as we go by counting down 1 finger per minute so that I don't have to keep looking at the clock. Instead, I can look at you.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. So the 4 principles are consent, circles, feedback, also known as double linking, and election by consent. Oh, I need these fingers, Idit. This is the awesome. Thank you. So the principle of consent. The principle of consent tells us that when we are moving forward together, we're moving forward with the consent of everybody who's involved in the work. And the way that that works in practice is that, when we work together, we've got a certain set of agreements that shape how we work. If you think about this as playing a game, we could say that we have rules of the game. These rules might say that some of us get to make certain decisions, like somebody's in charge of spending certain kinds of money, somebody else is in charge of the website, that sort of thing. And when we change those rules, we need to agree to that change. Now, this is true in any kind of organization. Sometimes people would say, we know that we've agreed to a change when there's a majority rule vote. That's not how we do it in sociocracy. In sociocracy, we know that we've agreed to changing the rules when we test for consent. So somebody makes a proposal, we understand what's being proposed, and then we ask, is there any reason we can't afford to try this new experiment, this change in the rules? So another way of asking that would be, is there a cost or a risk that we can't afford to take, a cost we can't afford to pay or a risk we can't afford to take in this experiment? So if we can't afford to try it, we're not going to do it. If we can afford to try it, then the default is we say yes and we move forward together. We try it out, and then we try something else out the next time we come up with a new proposal. So that's the principle of consent. That is, only by consent do we make changes to the rules or changes to the way power works. The second principle is the principle of circles. So a circle is a group of people who are working together in sociocracy to deliver a particular kind of value, like a product or a service, to a specific customer or specific beneficiary. So a circle is everybody who's needed to deliver this value together. That might mean putting on a workshop, hosting a dance event, running an organization. And if there's too many people to fit them all in one room, for them to work together closely, then you can create sub-circles to hold part of the work. And in a circle, you get to make decisions, these policy changes by consent about how you're going to work. So you decide how you work, you decide who the members are together. And that brings us to the third principle, the principle of feedback. So we need feedback. We need to get information back in order for us to guide ourselves. For example, right now, I'm completely dependent on Idit flashing those fingers at me to give me feedback about how much time I've got left. And I'm also scanning your faces to see, are people smiling and nodding? People look confused. So I'm really teaching this based on the feedback that I'm getting. Well, in a sociocratic organization, the absolute minimum support for feedback that we think is acceptable is what's called a double link. And that is a way that we build feedback into the structure of the organization. So every time you have a circle like the board or the general circle, and it delegates, creates a subcircle, there's a lead link that goes down to lead that subcircle, but that subcircle also sends a representative link back up, and that creates a loop of connection, the lead link going down and the representative link going up, that weaves the organization together in a web of consent, because both of those two people participate in policy making, the consent process, in both the circle above and the circle below. So that structure supporting feedback is the absolute minimum guarantee of feedback, although we need feedback everywhere. And the last principle is the principle of election by consent. So this says, hey, you can use consent to delegate just about anything. You can delegate spending money, you can delegate changing the name of the organization. The one thing you cannot delegate is the choice of who's going to play these key roles. And the choice of who's going to play the roles must always be made by consent. And so we'll get to play with elections by consent today in different ways. You'll get to see Idit and I doing one together here. And during the AGM, that's happening next. If you're sticking around for that, you'll get to participate in one or observe one. So the election by consent is a decision not by a majority rule vote, but by the strongest positive arguments in favor of different possible choices that we can make. So those are the 4 principles. There are lots of different ways of living these principles, both in organizations and in our own personal lives. But if you are doing these 4 principles, you are doing sociocracy or DG.
Amazing, Nate.
Thank you so much. Feedback.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing how quickly, and I love that you started with the ones that seemed to be a little bit more complicated, had more meat to them in the explanation, and then the last one, which is complicated in some ways, but easier to understand, perhaps. Okay, so now again, we thought that a little bit like before, but this time maybe more around our work, for me and for Nate to share what are the elements in dynamic governance that we take into our leadership, into our work, which is similar to what we shared before, but how can it look more practical for us, maybe as facilitators, as teachers, as therapists, and so on. Do you want to continue and I'll follow after you?
Sure. Yeah. So I want to think about well, I want to actually invite everybody here to just check in for yourself and think about those 4 principles that I just shared with you: consent, circles, the feedback, and election by consent. And to just think for yourself, what would the impact be of practicing these things in your own life and work? So if you want to make some notes for yourself, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to share a little bit more with you about that, but what I'm sharing is intended to sort of provoke your imagination. So if you tune out a little bit from what I'm saying in order to write something down for yourself, that's wonderful. So in my experience, it's so easy to get stuck trying to do sociocracy according to the book. There's a lot of really detailed guidance about best practice that we can draw on in sociocracy, and there are scripts. But Gerard Endenberg, who's the sort of founder of sociocracy, and all of the senior practitioners that I know, and in my experience, this is true as well, we recommend that you start using sociocracy really with this focus on the value that we're contributing. You know, the circles are organized around what value are we delivering? And if we try to move forward in a way that focuses on following the rules rather than focusing on delivering value, then we really get lost. This is not about something to do right. This is about how can we organize ourselves to serve? How can we organize ourselves to create value in ourselves and in service of others? So all of the principles and practices that we're talking about today, if you go away from this thinking, yes, I'm going to follow that checklist because sociocracy is good. Well, you know, we will have completely failed to serve you. well, maybe that's the thing that you need. Okay, maybe that's what you need. But a little bit of a pat on the back for righteous activity. But it's not going to help you make your life better or help you serve people that you're here to serve better. So yeah, as you're thinking about, like, how can I apply this? I really want to invite you to come back to this question of, how would testing for consent actually serve the people that I'm working with? Or how would that serve me? How would that serve my family or my loved ones? How would a focus on purpose and creating value together, be of greater service? How would being open to feedback and designing feedback into everything that I do be of greater service? How would making decisions, choosing from different options based on the positive arguments in favor of them rather than on how many people are pushing for them, how might that be of service? Where can I apply that? So I'm just going to pause there and hand back to you, Idit, if you want to add anything more.
Yeah, lovely. I mean, we're gonna in a moment we're gonna take those questions, and we've got them prepared for you, and we're gonna take some reflection time, some inner journey to the body, and then time to write and reflect. But yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying, and like one of the ways for me, it's in my home. Me and my kids, which are not kids anymore, but definitely if they were younger and I was open to it then. So we decide things by consent in the house. So that's one way that it's like in every day of my life, if there's any question or something that we need to decide on, we'll do it by consent, and we're just doing it in a flowing way. So it's not like, let's stop now and get serious about it. And sometimes I hear them shout from under, no consent, complete objection. But that's just fun, because we created for our home a certain language as well. Another way for me that's really changed the way that I hold spaces with music. Not all of my work is around music or open floor, but for me that's totally changed. Music used to stress me out on what to do in 2 hours group and so on. So I let it all go, and I come in with a lot of music, and I put some music, and then as a group, everybody shares in a round. And then as a facilitator, I feel what's there. And I said, right, I feel like maybe we can move with this today. And do we all in consent of it? Can we live with it? Is it safe enough? Is it good enough in the body that we give it a try together as a group? Yeah, all right. And if not, then let's move it a little bit, and then we try again or something. And the same with my music. I sort of put things, and sometimes they work and sometimes they work less, and I learn and they learn. And I don't stress with those lessons. And everybody is growing together as a community. And we get so much more intimate, and I am much more intimate because I'm very vulnerable in this place. I'm not coming like as if I know anything. So it's a practice for me when I hold these spaces. But it's the only way today that I hold music spaces. Otherwise I do other work, which is a bit different. So yeah, so that's for me, one of the way that DG has really helped my practice as a teacher and my practice as a movement practitioner. Yeah. So.
I want to say one more piece here, Idit, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
So this is, I'm in the process of getting divorced after a marriage of 17 years. My wife and I still love each other very much, but we found that the kind of relationship that we're each wanting to create for ourselves doesn't match up. So we have, this value that we're creating doesn't match. And so we're choosing to go in different directions. but we have kids, and we both care very much about our kids and about the family container. And so we have this circle, which is the circle of the Whitestone family, that we are completely committed to holding together. And so as we're going through this process of the divorce, we continually check in, is this change that we're considering going to be too costly or risky for our family? And if it is, then we have to change it. There's just no way. And so we've been able to get clear about what we are committed to creating together, what value we're creating, and stay in service of that, even as we change a lot of other stuff. So that's something that's really valuable to me.
Beautiful. Yeah, and thank you, Nate, for adding this piece. It's lovely to see how what we do goes everywhere. When I think about, purpose, even just from what you're saying, what comes to me is when you think about purpose, sometimes we really hold on to a purpose and we get blinded by other things, but process is something that evolves. Purpose, it's something that constantly evolves and moves, and we move with it. Beautiful. Yeah, maybe just how you doing? Temperature check. How's your body? How's your jaws? How's your shoulders? Yeah. Do we need a wiggle, a stretch, a tongue out? Do what we need to do. There's talking, but there's always movement in our body and always time to stretch. Yeah, so I think we're ready to go into a little bit of a inner reflection, and I'm wondering if to share my my screen with these questions.
So while Idit is setting up the screen share, we're asking people to choose one of these 4 questions. There are.
You in a minute. No. Oh, where are we?
Here
we are.
We don't want to overload ourselves.
Yeah.
So please just pick one of these 4 to explore. Every one of these could probably last for at least a day of practice. So, don't worry. But you can come back to the others anytime you like. Today, just stick with one. How long?
And they'll be on the screen, so they're not going anywhere. But just before, because it's so important, and the essence of today is really to see how we hear with our body. How do we not look for a solution through our heads or only with our thinking mind, but really also include our body? So once again, I invite you to take a breath, to take a screenshot of yourself, your composition, just for a moment to go into the body, to allow maybe the breath to help you, or your movement teachers to do your own practice of coming into the body. And I invite you to maybe look at the different body parts as members, as if they represent members of your circle, members of your body. A circle is a structure and our body is a structure. Often, sometimes people, due to trauma, they go against structure, but structure holds us. So feeling into our structure, into our liver, into our bones, our muscles, all members of our structure, our circle, our body. And of course, if movement helps you, then please, that's what we're here for. As we go into our body and aware of our physical sensation and body parts, aware of our emotional body, aware of our cognitive body. What's the quality there? Spacious, crowded. And we also invite to be aware of awareness itself. The part that sees all of it together. And I will gently read those questions and just listen. Just listen to what resonates with you, what takes your fancy. So if we look at the principle of consent, what part of you stops you from moving forward? Do you listen to that part? How do you listen to that part? As you notice that, how do you feel in your body? Just as you hear the question, what's the first impulse in your body? Just notice. And the question around the principle of circle. Do you connect? Do you feel your purpose in your body? Do you feel the movement of your purpose in your body? How does that feel or doesn't feel? And a possible question around double linking. Are the different parts of you, your voices, your subpersonality, personas, whatever works for you, are they aware of each other? Do they give space to each other? And maybe our question for election by consent is your whole body involved in the process of making choices? Do you make a choice? Do you receive a choice? And just notice in your body if there's one question that is louder, is easier. Go with what's easy, what's simple. And in your own time, we'll take the next 5 minutes to write in your journal, write on the page. The questions are here. And you can read through them in your own rhythm and feel them, let your body write. see what comes up, and you may answer one and you may answer as many as you like. Just check if there's any questions. And yeah, you can also move with those questions. Absolutely. I mean, if that's what you feel called for, then take a question and move with it. Absolutely, what's working for you. And we'll take another minute to finish up. Yeah. Okay, so I think we're going to invite us now to go into sort of triads and breakout rooms, to share maybe how was this experience for yourself. And notice when you share, if you speak on the experience, if you speak and you can relate to the experience and speak from the experience that you've just had. And we're going to send it, I'll put it here in the chat. And we invite you to, we'll see how much time we have. I think we can have some around 10 minutes for 3 people to share. So about 3 minutes each and 1 moment to arrive or see. And we also invite you to think of a situation as a leader, as a movement teacher, as a working in organizations or your own work, or your family, and to think to any of situations like this that you might be able to address, to apply it through DG, through maybe what you've just shared now between you and yourself. Maybe it's connected to what you've just written. And you can you can either share about what you wrote, share about your experience, or also take an issue, something from real life, and how one of those principles that we just went through could be applied to it. Do you want to share anything else, Nate? Do you want to add?
Yes, just make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak, but it's really okay to have a little bit of crosstalk and to let other people spark your process. If you hear other people talking about stuff that is meaningful to you, feel free to respond. I just want to share that, for me, as I was sitting with those questions and tuning into myself, I was then bringing my attention back out and tuning into those people that I could see, and then tuning back into myself and my own relationship to those questions and tuning into the people that I was seeing. And that kind of a loop of my awareness is one of the things that I often do as a facilitator. And I find it very moving. Now, I have no idea if the way that I felt moved was connected to the things that were going on for the people who are here. But it felt like it was connected to me. I felt like I was connected to this process that was going on for everybody around me.
Thank you. So I just remind you, share from your experience of the exercise itself, what you wrote for yourself, or also you're very invited to pick on something in your own life, in your own leadership, in your own work, in your own teaching, that you may think, how can I apply any of those principles that I've just heard now, how they may help me? And then we're going to come back to the big room and we're going to do some share, and then we're going to pick some topics, and then we're going to work on them, work with them. So enjoy yourself, and we'll see you soon. Hello, welcome back. Hope you had a good time, seeing smiles. Yeah. So Nate, do you want to take us to how we continue, move on to our next chapter?
Yes, I do. Welcome back, everybody. So I hope you had rich, productive conversations in your pairs or threesome. I'd like you to just take a moment in your own inner space to breathe and consider the conversation you just had. And while you're considering, what we're going to do next is Idit and I will do an activity with you folks. And really, we have to pick one or maybe two that is a useful, practical application of this kind of work. And we want to do it based on the needs or the themes that you folks are identifying. So we're going to decide which theme to address using a sociocratic or dynamic governance election process. And it's just going to be Idit and I making the decision. But you get to propose things that we can focus on and watch us do it. So in your inner space, please just check for yourself, is there anything that came up in my conversation that would be really valuable for all of us to take a closer look at? Is there anything where I'd really like to have a practical tool for working with this particular issue? And if there is something, please put it in the chat now. And if you're not sure how to phrase it, you might phrase it something like, let's talk about evolutionary purpose, or whatever that might be. And if you want to, you're welcome to add a little bit of the why, like let's talk about evolutionary purpose because we're all called to something by the universe. And I want to understand how that can connect to the sociocratic process. So I'm just looking in the chat for anything that you folks are proposing for us. Oh, we've got some great things popping up. Using DG tools with people who are unaware of DG or self-inquiry or communication listening skills, that's a rich area of practice. How does that which we serve get defined? When there's consent, official consent, but you know that members of the circle or internal parts haven't really spoken up. Maybe they're too shy or the process is too fast.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, also if the body is involved, there is more space for unplanned choices. Absolutely. I like that.
How do we make sure making a decision takes reasonable time? Well, that's a rich conversation right there.
Yeah.
And how do we really include all parts? How do we know that we have consent or feedback? If individuals aren't ready to feedback yet? And what's the relationship between the rational and the intuitive here? That's a great question. What's the relationship between the rational and intuitive ever in any moment of practice.
So we have to choose one.
Is there at all a moment when no part of me is objecting? Ooh, do I get to do anything at all if all of me needs to consent? It's a sexual relationship. What to do if there's no consent made, but we've reached the time limits and must make a decision? Oh, that's a good one. So, hey, folks, I am loving these, just absolutely loving these. And there are some short answers to these that might be useful, but there are some short answers that are kind of off the shelf answers, not the practical tool sort of thing, not the experiential practice. There are some short answers. For example, Igars says, what do you do if there's no consent, but we've reached the time limits and must take a decision? So I just want to give an example here, which is there's an existing rule for that in sociocracy. That's handled. The reason that we have the rules of the game and that we delegate operational matters, the reason that we have a power structure is so that even if you haven't come up with a new way of doing things, the old way can handle things. So if you haven't made a new decision, then the people who are currently in charge use the powers you've already given them to handle the issues. So that's, but there are some other examples of that, but that's sort of a quick answer, and it's not, we wanted to go for something that's kind of a useful practice that we can share with you. How can the different parts get in contact with each other directly? It's not across me as a illusory CEO. So Idit, we've heard these different things as proposals. Do you want to sort of make a proposal for any of these? Speak in favor of any of these things that have been nominated? So just so everybody knows, in a sociocratic election, you get a bunch of nominations, and people have a chance to reflect on the nominations they've heard, and then they can change their minds. So in this case, the way we're structuring this is, you all have nominated things, and Idit and I are hearing the nominations, and now we're going to respond with coming up with, I think we could work on this one by bringing, doing this practice, or we could work on this one by doing that practice. So would you like to suggest one of these to address and a practice, or?
First, I thought that we've got all the chat saved. So any questions that we're not gonna be taking today or can have enough time to look at them, I think there are great things for us to add into our newsletter or in another form maybe, and talk to these points, so nothing will be lost. And as I'm looking through the questions, I'm picking that there's something there that speaks of the same similarities in the questions, and they're around how do we reach a consent if we have no time, or how do we really do we, all of us needs to come to a consent for us to have a consent. It also applied to the question of if some voices cannot be heard, and maybe they're too shy to speak, or we feel in the room that there's something not quite there. So I'm thinking to take all of that and somehow intervene it. What do you think? What do you
Yeah,
hear?
that's exactly the same theme I was picking up. And, of course, there's other stuff there that's really valuable, but that seems really strong. And there's a strong argument for going with this, including all voices, because that's such a foundational practice here.
Right.
And actually, I had a feeling, I don't know if you remember it when we were talking when I was in the airport, and I was saying, I have a feeling that there's this thing that maybe we ought to do, but let's do this process and find out. And right now I'm going, it is that process. So I want to propose that we do this I commit but practice as a way of drawing out the places of resistance within us. So do you have any other ways of addressing this? Any other practices that you'd like to suggest as possibilities?
I would like some time, because for me, those questions, and something that maybe I didn't say in the beginning, that one of the biggest resource for me from dynamic governance is really this looking and healing through these years of working, healing my inner safety, safety in myself, my safety within a group, and my safety within the world, and there the sense of my belonging is transforming and changes, and the way my participation changes in the world. So for me, there is something there that I'd like to bring with regards to the body, and where is it that we sense safety, and how do we know when something is safe enough, is good enough? And that's maybe something that I want to relate to and to bring in. But why don't you you start with this really interesting I commit but.
Okay, great. And I'm just, here's my test for consent. Do we have enough time to, I believe we've got 20 minutes. I know that we can do the I commit but for 5 minutes, and people will get a lot of value out of that. Does that give us enough time to do the piece that you're doing? So
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So what I've just done, just so everybody knows, I was testing for consent. So that was a question about a cost or risk. That is, can we afford to run both of these things in the time we have left? So we have consented to an approach, and here we go. I want to invite everybody to find somewhere in your space that you can move. You don't have to move far, but you need to be able to take a few steps forward and a few steps back. So it'll probably be easiest for you if you put your camera in front of you so you can keep looking at the screen as you do this. So I'm just going to do that. And what we're doing here is we're going to play with consent. We're going to play with the consent of all the different parts of ourselves. So in answer to this question, how do you know? Well, first of all, you never fully get all the communication from everybody. We're always in this ongoing process of connecting and discovering. So it would be crazy to imagine that we could get all of the communications from all parts of everybody complete, because by the time you get to the end of the conversation, everybody's changed already. Having said that, there's a really clear feeling in ourselves or in the room when we're able to move forward in alignment. And that alignment is what in sociocracy we call good enough for now and safe enough to try. So it's not like everything's perfect. It's just we're safe enough. We can try this together. we're ready to move forward. So I'd like you to experiment with finding that in yourself. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to think of something like a project, for example, that we think, I would really like to do that. So I'm going to think of something I've been thinking about. It's a bit scary for me. I want to create a cooperative community that is a buying community and shares a lot of things in life. I'm not going to tell you all about it, but I'm just saying creating this cooperative community. So I'm going to say, I commit to creating this cooperative community. So that's meaningful for me. So it doesn't have to be meaningful for anybody else here, but you need some words that are meaningful for you. So I step forward as I say that. And then if I notice any kind of resistance in myself, I'm going to step back. Now, in this case, my son has just arrived home, so I'm going to step into my office to continue doing this with you folks. So if I notice any kind of resistance in myself, any kind of disharmony, I'm going to then say, but, and then I'll take a step back, and then I'll just fill in the blank with whatever comes to my mind. Doesn't matter what comes to my mind. So here I go. I commit to creating this cooperative community I've been dreaming about, but people are going to think that it's too much. So very easy. I might say, but I have a strange feeling in my tummy. I might say, but my ear itches. I might say, but, my father didn't accept my ambition. It doesn't matter, whatever it is that comes up. And you can turn off your mic if you want. Nobody else has to hear it. We're just doing, I commit, but, I commit, but. And we're going to do that for about a minute. And then we're just going to see what's happened. But I'm going to do it out loud so you have some company. I commit to creating this cooperative community that I've been dreaming of, but I'm afraid of rejection. I commit to creating this cooperative community I've been dreaming of, but can I afford to take the time to do it? I commit to creating this cooperative community that I've been dreaming of. But the people that I want to do it with might not want to do it with me. And as you keep playing with this, you might try changing the words of the commitment. You might say, oh, I noticed that this proposal I'm making, this commitment that I'm making, isn't quite working for me. How could I tweak it a little bit? I commit, but. So I'm going to try tweaking the commitment. I commit to asking the people I want to start cooperative community with if they're interested. Oh, wow, that just landed for me. I feel completely aligned with that. I don't have any but. So I'm just going to stand here and breathe for a moment and enjoy that experience, but please go ahead and keep playing with this. Just find out what buts there might be, unless you find something that really lands for you. Now, I said we were only going to take a few minutes for this, and that's been a few minutes. So please bring your awareness back into this, the sort of main conversation. But I want to encourage you to play with this. I find this tool to be tremendously useful for myself, and I use it with my coaching clients. And really what we're doing here, that's this practice of consent. And so I want to invite people just to share in the chat if there's anything about your experience just now that you want other people to know.
Maybe I'll just take it one more step,
Yes,
Nate, and then we
please.
can, and then I'll just build on that. I'm aware of the time as well. So what I invite you to do is to notice if you're still sitting with a butt in your body. And where is this butt sitting in the body? And I want you to notice if you feel safe enough to feel this butt in your body. And see if you can soften to this butt or this fear or this concern. And just notice the level of how safe you feel to feel what it is that you feel. And the process, the movement in the body, how close, how far you are from that butt. And yeah, notice your body parts, notice your movement, notice your breath. Notice if your mind comes in and you're out of the room thinking, if you're staying with the body. All of the above is good questions, of course. It's just noticing the level of safety to feel what we feel and to communicate it within our own body. Yeah, and maybe now you can come back to the chat and come back to the screen and write yourself, write in the chat.
Yeah, what are you noticing? What happened for you? Were you able to find these different parts that you might not ordinarily notice? Or was it things that you always notice? Were you able to find a way in yourself that was where the different parts of you were ready to move forward together? Did you feel safe enough to tune in and explore those parts that were holding back?
Yeah, and wherever we felt the objection, it doesn't matter where in the body, if it's in our head or if it's in our bellies, then we turn our attention to this body part. So we feel our head full of objection. Okay, what's the resonance of that in my body? Oh, there is no resonance of that in the body, and that's what I feel. That's the connection. So we're really tuning into the moment, to the movement that is happening in a particular moment. Everything's a movement. Stuckness is a movement. Stillness is a movement. Everything's movement.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Bence. So we have 9 minutes left in our time together. Yeah, parts that want to protect you. They're young. They need care. It's so true.
Welcome.
Yeah. The butt could release when I gave the commitment, but with a limited time frame. That's wonderful. And that thing of having a limited time frame, that works really well internally and in groups. You know, if you can say, oh, it's not a commitment forever, it's a commitment for 1 month. I'm going to run a brief experiment. Arms lifting up, plexus closing in.
Yeah, and also maybe briefly to speak about the fact that in Sociocracy, we always have a review. So when something feels just about safe enough, just about good enough, we can also review it, take the first step. and review it in a month's time, review it in 2 weeks' time, in a 6 months' time. But we're only taking the next step that is safe enough and good enough for now. And sometimes it's big decisions in life, like putting a gas tank in a co-housing, and it's not something that you can change in a 3 months a situation. But then we take more time around this consent to listen more deeply to our own voices, to our community voices, and taking a step at a time, listening to the movement.
Yeah, and I want to just also invite you to tune in. How did you know that there was a but? You know, is that a familiar experience for you? So just as an example, today I've been noticing feelings of sadness in my upper chest, and tuning into that as, you know, as a but. And I don't know, at some point in the past, 10 years ago, whenever, I don't know, tuning into this, I would then say, oh, that's a no. It's not a no. It's a concern. And when I tune into those parts of me generously, that's not part of me saying, no, you can't. It's part of me saying, oh, I have something that I need to be heard. And when I hear it, it's not saying stop. It turned out that those feelings for me were saying, open up further. Like this, being willing to listen to those parts rather than just jumping to a conclusion about them is so valuable for me. And I'm hoping that we're giving you a practical tool that makes it easier for you to do that in your own practice.
Yeah. Shall we maybe to finish our time together, shall we maybe have a round of just like a word, a sound, something of your experience, noticing that we've got about 6 minutes, and it would be nice to hear everybody's voice. So yeah, this is us, and we're right on time. Amazing. Somebody wants to come in.
But we haven't done you and me.
No, we should. You go first.
Alive and tender.
Yeah. Yeah, expanded and grounded. In gratitude. Nick, one more word.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. As I said, I love sharing this with you all, and it's been very rich for me. So, mwah.
Thank you, and thank you, Nate. It's been a blast to work this thing together and
So fun.
Create a new, for me, a new concept of what is how can embodied DG look like, and how we can take it into our lives and work and leadership. So thank you all for being with us, and we're looking forward to see you all in half an hour, or just 10 before the half an hour. So it'll be 20 past the hour for some movement before we come into the GA.